Welcome to an episode of Mission Connect, a brand new way to connect to missionaries, brought to you by Shalom World and Family Missions Company. I'm your host, Kevin Kuster. Today I'll be interviewing Cate Broadbent. She currently lives in Colorado with her husband, although she's been to the mission fields in Peru and Mexico. Hey Cate, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Super excited to sit down and talk with you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here.
So Cate, can you kind of share with us like a childhood God experience, something that you really knew it was God and he was speaking into your life?
I grew up in a Catholic family, but as I went through, I think, my elementary school years and into middle school, my parents started discovering their faith in a deeper way. And my dad gave me a Bible. And so I started reading a little bit of the Bible every day. And I think through that experience is where I first started to experience God in a powerful way, because if I was reading the Bible or a spiritual book, I started to realize it wasn't just a coincidence. Like, I might be struggling with something, and then I would read something that would be as if it were God speaking directly to me. I had that experience of knowing that God was real and was there and was speaking to me. And I could say that's just purely grace that he called me at such a young age to follow him, and that I really haven't looked back.
Just share with me a little bit about your educational experiences and professional experiences. How did you get where you are today?
Right before I was in high school, that probably I first heard something about like being a missionary, and that kind of stood out in the back of my mind. And so I think for a long time I knew I wanted to work in ministry of some sort. But as I went through high school, I wanted to serve and work with people, and a lot of my preparation for college was considering doing teaching as a profession. But as I got to the end of high school, I actually was starting to feel like God was calling me in a different direction, and he called me directly into ministry. So I worked with a family organization for a number of years. It was during that time that I really delved into the teachings of Vatican II and Pope John Paul II, and really became convicted of the call of the laity to build up the church.
You've obviously had an early calling. What would you say to someone who's kind of listening to your story right now and trying to discern, but they just don't know if they hear God's voice?
Each person's call is unique, and he speaks to us in a unique way. With that organization I had served, they asked me to go to Mexico, and during that time, working for this organization was where I gained a lot of my audio, video, and design experience. And then, of course, being in Mexico, I fell in love with the Latino culture. I learned Spanish. I spent 4 years there. So that was really, in a lot of ways, that was like a college education for me. That opened up my world. I saw something beyond. I had a thirst to serve the nations. And I eventually discerned that that God wanted me to close that chapter of my ministry and discern something else. And, I had to do something to earn a living. And so I got a job at a local print shop in my hometown through the work that I did for my customers and being involved with the arts on the side. So during that time, I was also involved with music and theater, and then started, doing some freelance projects here and there. And then from that job, I moved on to work for a publishing company. So I was designing book covers and book interiors. So I feel like that period of my life was very much preparing me for where I am now. And so he works differently with each person. And if he's not giving you a clear sign, if a rose has not come from St. Therese or a sign has not dropped from the sky, that's okay. You can still move forward.
Can you remember where you truly felt God's presence?
I was at the end of my high school years and really trying to figure out what God wanted of me. Of course, we put the pressure on ourselves, right? We feel like I have to make a decision. I have to know what to do. I was only 17, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to know exactly where I needed to go next. That was a moment that I just got down on my knees in my room. I prayed a rosary, but I kept my eyes closed the entire time. And I feel like that was just a moment of really experiencing God through our Blessed Mother, letting Him in, actually opening my heart up to whatever He might ask of me.
But yeah, I think we all want that burning bush, right? And I think God kind of many times remains in the shadows. Clearly our choice, right? Our faith activates to make a choice. If you couldn't work in the missions field anymore, what else could you see yourself doing?
I think I always, wanted to get married and have a family, and I would love to be a wife and a mother. It is hard to imagine like one thing that I would choose, because I think if I had just gone down the regular conventional career path, I would have probably ended up in education and have been a teacher. And I don't think that would have been unfulfilling, but I know that wouldn't have really fulfilled the desires of my heart. Honestly, I don't know where He will lead next. I think a lot of times in my early vocational discernment, I was like, oh, what does God want of me? He must want this very difficult thing of me. He probably wants me to do the thing I don't want to do. And you know what? I don't think that that's true. If He does call you to do something that you don't feel initially inclined to, He'll make that clear. I think being a foreign missionary is something that I would like to do. If He's put that desire in your heart, at least look into it. Give it a try. Go on a week-long mission trip. We will be happiest living out the desires of our heart because it's God Himself who has placed those desires there.
So as you were kind of discerning your call, how did FMC kind of help you in the progress and in the process of kind of becoming a missionary?
Somebody told me about this organization, thinking that maybe it was she had gone on a mission trip and discerned a little bit and didn't feel called, but she said, hey, maybe you would want to check them out. And I went on their website, and I think it resonated so much with me that I was afraid to contact anybody. So I just kind of put it off for a while. So nobody even knew. Nobody from FMC knew me or knew that I was discerning. But then finally, I bit the bullet and went on a mission trip. Wanted to go on a mission trip to Costa Rica. That was what I had in my mind. But God just didn't open that door. And interestingly enough, the missionaries who were in training were in Mexico at that time. There were, there were a variety of families too, families that had biological children and adopted children. And having grown up in a family where I actually have biological siblings and adopted siblings, that was something that spoke to my heart. And because I spoke Spanish, I was able to really just jump in and integrate myself into the mission. And I spent a lot of time chatting with some of the other missionaries. Why don't you come visit us in Louisiana? And so there was a lot of encouragement there. It wasn't pressure, but it was also just it challenged my status quo. I think that they really were supporting me with their prayer. And then I began the application process to be a missionary and encountered more missionaries, those who walk specifically with those discerning. And they helped me through that process and guided me through my fundraising. And then within a year, there I was in Louisiana for my missionary training.
So I know that the arts and graphic design and music is obviously very important to you. It seems to me that you've found a way to use those skills, not only in your mission work, but through kind of honoring and praising God. Can you kind of speak to us about what does that mean to use your gifts and talents in service of mission work?
I have found so much joy over the years in my music. I play the violin and I dabble in guitar and other things that are useful for ministry. But I have always done that for enjoyment and have been able to connect with some local community orchestras. And then I also love art, and God led me kind of through unexpected events to work in the graphic design industry and to really fall in love with that profession. But yeah, I knew that wasn't the end all be all. So when I went into the mission field and kind of left graphic design behind, it was a challenge for me because I thought, well, I still want to do this professional job, but I really feel God calling me out into the mission field. And He did give me a way to integrate those things. doors opened up for me to teach music to children while I was in Peru. And there were definitely opportunities in little ways to use my artistic skills. But then when I was called back from Peru and there was a need in our office for somebody in the creative department in communications and design, I realized like that was what God had been preparing me for. I love it because, God is creative. He created us, he created the world, he created the arts, and he created all of us differently.
So as we kind of, move into the future, I'd like to kind of talk about some of your aspirations. What do you see yourself doing with your future missionary work? And then also it's obvious that you're using media and technology to kind of evangelize and spread God's word. So how do you see that growing in your missionary work?
I have so many hopes to just expand our department, expand our reach, to reach more people through our media. So part of that is connecting more with other media outlets, connecting with people who are podcasting, with diocesan publications. I want everybody in the U.S., like every parish, to know, oh, there's this organization called Family Missions Company that sends lay missionaries, including families and children, to serve Christ. Make it a normal thing to normalize the lay missionary calling. I would want anyone who goes to their parish priest or talks to someone in their parish who says, hey, I feel a missionary call, that this person can tell them, oh, I know these organizations who are doing foreign missions. It might be us and some other ones, so that people can truly discern which organization they feel like they fit into.
What would be some of your aspirations for future families and future, young adults and kids getting involved in missionary work? What would be something that you could say to set them on fire and just go after this?
Wow. I mean, my aspiration would, definitely be a church that's more on fire. I think the more people we are able to train to serve as missionaries, the more people that we have who are going to ignite their parish on fire when they come back stateside. It's not an easy calling, not easy for a family at all. But I hope that if we train them well, we send them out well, and then they're able to come back, and maybe they go back to their hometown, their home parish, and they've had this experience, they can set their own parish on fire. I think my ultimate vision would be a church in America that is set on fire worldwide. And that's what that would be my aspiration for the future.
What are your personal aspirations, and how do you think God is going to move in your life and continue to move in the world?
Well, yeah, I'm going on 9 months of marriage, so this is a whole new adventure. I feel like I'm just getting settled in seeing how God wants me to be involved here in my own parish. The call to mission starts way before someone has a call to mission. It starts in the family and helping couples to prepare better for marriage so that they understand the sacraments and they understand the importance of helping each other get to heaven and raising their children in the faith. I mean, truly, that's where vocations are going to come from. My personal aspiration is to be able to, in my own community, to be that witness to the missionary call.
I know you're newly married. What were the fruits of your ministry work that you can obviously see that, oh, this is very transferable and very helpful within my marriage? Is there anything that you can think of?
Living in community has prepared me for marriage. Having to live with other people and I've learned a lot about my faults throughout the years. Live with people who maybe rub against me like sandpaper, or who help me, who bring out maybe the worst in me. But because of my experience of working with so many different people, I think that coming into marriage, I didn't expect him to be just like me. And we are compatible even though we're different. And that's such a positive fruit.
What's your average day in the arena, in the missionary field? What does an average day look like for you?
My average day, I get up and start with my prayer time. My husband usually goes off to work fairly early. At 8 a.m., I sit down at my desk, and it might be anything from working on graphic design, designing something for our website or a mailing that's going out, or our monthly glory story that goes out to our donors. And I'm often collaborating with other departments because our department is to kind of be a mouthpiece for the rest of the organization. I might be communicating with missionaries. I might be communicating with the vocations department to promote the missionary call, or somebody's going to a conference to share what Family Missions Company does. And so we're working on producing materials for them. And then a couple of times a year, we work on our magazine that goes out. And that goes out in the spring and the fall, and that gathers stories and reflections from missionaries around the world. And we compile those with graphics, with some other elements, always a fundraising appeal. Sometimes a missionary might share some of their hardships on the field. They might share a story of a particular person that they're serving, because it's always helpful to relate to the poor in a way that they have a name, they have a face. The reason I love this job is because I've been there too. I've been there where, I wake up in the jungles of Peru, covered in sweat.
We all have our struggles and we all have our difficulties in our faith walk. Was there any time, and can you just share with us a little bit that time where you kind of struggled or wrestled with God?
There have definitely been moments, difficulties in community life and ministry, the challenges of living in a foreign country, being far from family, challenges of discerning marriage, but going through breakups and wondering, okay, God, where are you leading? What do you want me to do? And I think that has been maybe a lot of my struggle, just when there are those personal moments of great difficulty in, overcoming my impatience to be able to live well with others, and seeing how difficult that is, especially in the mission field where you're stripped of so many other things. And it's like, wow, God, did you dupe me? You brought me out here in the wilderness to die? Those are a couple of moments where I have wrestled with the Lord, so to speak.
People might not necessarily remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I always feel like the arts and music, right, moves people in a way that they feel something. Obviously, you've had your trips to Peru and to Mexico, and mission work has been a huge portion of your life. And I'm sure you got a bunch of them. But if I asked you one particular person in the arena, in the mission fields, that truly moved you and that you remember to this day, and it might be like a cornerstone encounter that you go back to.
I had an encounter with somebody in the States who was a music teacher, and she said, oh, I can send you to Peru with a dozen recorders, the instruments that the kids start with in elementary school that are very durable plastic and sometimes sound like a train whistle, not always the most pleasant sound. But you know what? They would fit in my suitcase, they weren't going to get damaged, and they were going to be able to stand up to the humidity, which you can't really say the same thing about a violin or another stringed instrument. So I went to Peru with these 12 recorders in my suitcase and some music books, and I just waited to see what the Lord would do. There was a neighbor girl who came over, and I said, hey, would you like to learn to play music? And as she started playing, other kids in the neighborhood would peek their heads in and say, I want to learn too. And I think there were a couple of students that really stood out to me. There was a little girl named Elena, and she came from just a very simple, poor family. When I started teaching music and, trying to teach music in a language that's not my first language is a challenge. So I really had to rely on the Lord to help me. But when I saw the kids, their hunger to learn, especially this little girl, Elena, she just had such a desire to learn. And then she started to just really pick things up. She, as I explained to her the different notes and how the note on the paper matched the note on her instrument, she said to me one day, she's like, I get it now. I get it. I can see it in my head. It makes sense. And it's just the magic of music to me. By the end of the year, that I was there, I had the kids wanting to do a concert, a recital. I was so proud because when we did the concert at the end of the year, the kids all came dressed up. They had showered or bathed, even if it was just in the river. And we had a little audience and a stage, and they all played one of the pieces that they had chosen, that they had learned throughout the year.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Connect in Christ.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Praying you'll join us on our next episode. I'm your host, Kevin Kuster. This is Mission Connect, exclusively on Shalom World.
Are you searching for purpose of life? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.